everyone, it's Alice, and today we are doing an autumn book haul. I say this every year, but autumn is my favorite season, and I always get overexcited about books when fall rolls around, and I kind of get overexcited about everything because I just love this time of year. So I went a little overboard with the new books, but that's okay because new books are exciting. We have a mix of things today. We have fantasy, some dark academia, some witchy books, some historical fiction, mysteries, all of my favorite things. So let's just get into it and let's start with the fantasy books because why not? We're starting with two books by one of my favorite authors. The first one being Swordheart by T. Kingfisher. And to be honest, I kind of just got this because I really like this author, and at this point, I'm kind of just collecting anything I can find by her because she never disappoints. This one follows a housekeeper who inherits out of nowhere, I think, the estate of her uncle or something, which is great. But then there are all of these relatives that come with that inheritance that are not so great. And I don't know if I'm getting this right, but I think that she like takes over this house and she finds a sword and there is a man in the sword. I don't know. But I think he wants to protect her from her relatives. I have no idea what's going on in here. It sounds crazy, but I really like this cover and I love this author. So whatever happens in here, whether there's a man in the sword or not, I'm sure it's gonna be great. The second one is Hemlock and Silver, and in this one we follow a healer who is an expert in like cures and poisons, and she even drinks poison regularly, I think. Maybe to make herself immune or to find new cures, I'm not quite sure. And she lives a very quiet life until one day the king summons her to the castle because his daughter, the princess, is sick and is maybe being poisoned, I'm not quite sure. And he wants her to help, and she tries everything she can, but nothing works until one day she finds a secret world in a mirror. This is a dark reimagining of Snow White, which is cool, and I'm really excited to read this, both this one and the other one. I just get very excited whenever I get books from this author because I just like them so much. This also has beautiful end papers, actually. I hadn't seen that. And I like her books because they're dark, but there's also a little bit of humor in it. And I did see mention in here that there's something about a narcissistic cat, and that is like, that's my kind of humor. I love that. Then we have another one by an author I already know I like. It's Bury Our Bones in the Midnight Soil by V.E. Schwab. And this is the kind of book that has several timelines. One is set in 1532 in Spain, one is set in 1827 in London, and the last one in 2019 in Boston. All I really know about this book is that it has vampires in it, which I'm into. I want to read more vampire books. And I've seen some reviews for this that make me think I'm gonna like it, so here it is. Next, we have The Stranger Times by C.K. McDonnell, and this is set at a newspaper that says it's dedicated to the weird and wonderful, but mostly weird, it seems like. It's a newspaper all about, like, unexplained events. And that sounds kind of cool, but it seems like it's a little bit of a mess because the editor is like a drunk and a terrible guy. All of the people who work there are misfits, and it's just a little chaotic. Enter into this, we have a new assistant editor who, I think her first day on the job, some sort of tragedy strikes, and they have to do some serious investigating into it, and it seems like maybe this has something to do with something that they've dismissed in the past as just like nonsense. That's all I really know about this one. I just like the idea of like a newspaper dedicated to maybe like supernatural stuff and things like that, and it just sounds like fun. Then we have got The Devils by Joe Abercrombie, and this is a tome of a book, and I just got it because it sounds kind of cool. It follows someone who is referred to as Brother Diaz, so I'm guessing he's like a monk or something, and he's summoned to the sacred city, and he's given an assignment. And that's great, but it turns out that like the people who have to go with him are all criminals and monsters, and it's kind of weird, but I think maybe they have to go into hell. And it seems like this mission is gonna require some bloody things happening. So it might be a good idea that he has this company actually. I kind of want to go into this not knowing much more. I just thought this sounded kind of like dark and intriguing, and this cover is actually doing quite a lot for me. It really makes me want to read it. Next, we have a bunch of witchy books because 'tis the season, and we're starting with The Spellshop by Sarah Beth Durst, which so many of you have told me I need to read, so here it is. This one follows a magical librarian who has spent the last decade in this library where she's been in charge of like the Empire's most precious spell books and magical books, and then a revolution happens and the library burns to the ground, and because of that she returns to a place she never thought she'd go back to. She goes to her childhood home, and I think she goes there and it's on an island, and she opens up a spell shop that might be illegal. I don't really know. It looks very cozy and it sounds very magical, and yeah, I don't really know what to expect from this. I feel like maybe there's some romance in it. I don't really know, but so many of you have said it's good, so I'm gonna give it a go. Secondly, we have a book that I meant to get last fall, but then I didn't get around to it, and now fall is rolling around again, so now it felt like it was time. It's Rewitched by Lucy Jane Wood, and this one follows a witch who, I think this is set in our world, and she has magical powers, so she kind of has to hide her magic from the people around her and other like non-magical people. And she works in a bookstore and she loves her job, but her boss is very toxic, and she's sort of burned out in a way. And then her 30th birthday rolls around, and because of that, her coven summons her to them, and she has to go through some sort of trial with her witchcraft. I think maybe in order to keep her powers, but she's burned out, so it's a little bit of a challenge. And that's all I really know about this one. I think it's a story about like found family and self discovery, and I think there's a little bit of romance to it, and it just looks super duper cozy and like it's gonna be a little bit of a lighter read. Then we have one that sounds kind of witchy, but it also has fairies in it. It's The Witchwood Knot by Olivia Atwater. And this one is set in Victorian England, and we're following a governess who suddenly finds her charge, who is a boy, to be totally changed. And I think he's suddenly very well behaved. And she thinks that he is a changeling. So the fairy folk have taken the real boy away and left this other creature. Unfortunately, like the father of that boy is about the only person in England who doesn't believe in fairies, and so the governess is sort of left by herself to try to save the boy. And I think she gets help from a fairy butler. So I'm guessing maybe the butler where she's staying and working is a fairy, but then he's also a little bit sketchy. I don't really know, but that sounds great. I love witchy stuff. I love fairy stuff. I love books set in Victorian England. So I think the mix of all of this is going to be really good. And I think maybe this is going to be a little bit dark. I think it's leaning more into that like dark part of fairy lore, which I really like. Next, we have The Briar Book of the Dead by A.G. Slatter. And this is actually a book that occasionally people will recommend to me, and I finally just got it. I really like this cover as well. It's set in a fantasy world, I think, and in this world, witches are usually like hunted by the church, but they've also been given special dispensation, and certain people get it because they help protect wherever we are from dangerous stuff that is outside of this place. Our main character comes from a long line of witches, but I think she's the first non-witch to be born into that family for a really long time. And so she can't really help with the magic stuff, so she ends up doing more administrative tasks. And through that, I think she unearths some secrets about this world and maybe some sort of plot. One of the reasons that I got this, outside of the fact that a lot of people recommend this book to me, is that it's apparently quite dark and gothic, and I think this author writes quite a lot of books in like the same world, but they're not necessarily related, so I think it's okay to read this as like a standalone. I hope so, at least. And yeah, it just looks and sounds really interesting, and I'm excited to see this world. Then we have a book that I've wanted for a while, but I couldn't find a copy of it, and then I finally came across it in a bookshop. It's Garden Spells by Sarah Addison Allen, and I don't remember where I got this book recommendation from. I feel like I saw it somewhere on BookTube, and it's one of those books that I just immediately felt like I was going to like. It's set in this small town where there is a small, quiet house with a garden, and in that garden, there is a magical tree that bears magical fruit. And the story is all about the family that tends that garden and tends that tree. And they've always been outsiders in their little town because they're a little bit different. And I think we all know what that means. Second to last for the Witchy Books, we have this beautiful book. This is The Bell Witches by Lindsey Kelk. And I just saw this book and I saw the cover and I saw it had witches and I was like, okay, I'm in. This follows a girl who I think loses her father, and so she's forced to go live with the only family she has, which is like an aunt who lives in Georgia or something, or maybe it's two aunts. And it turns out that they are hiding some sort of secret, so I am guessing that they are witches. The last one, before we move on to the next category, we have this. This is The Nature of Witches by Rachel Griffin. And again, this is a book that a lot of people have recommended to me. It's set in our world, and witches' powers are connected to different seasons. So I think each witch usually has an affinity to one season. But our main character is an Ever Witch, and she has all 4 seasons, or all kinds of seasonal magic. I don't really know how it works, but I think we follow her through an entire year and through all seasons, and we see love, loss, her training, her magical powers, and that's all I really know. You know I'm gonna read anything with a witch in it. Like, I'm always interested in these kinds of books, and this has been recommended to me several times, so I think it's gonna be good, and I really like the idea of like seasonal magic. I think that's really cool. Then we have some historical fiction, starting with The Historian by Elizabeth Kostova. And this is a book that a lot of people have recommended to me. Some of you keep telling me all the time that I need to read this and that I'm gonna love it. And I think this could have just as easily gone into the fantasy category because I am pretty sure this has vampires in it. I think this follows a young woman who one day she's in her father's library and she comes across this book and some old letters. And this plunges her into a world of like, I think her father has delved into some of this stuff in his youth, but he's never told her about it. And it seems like her mother actually has a dark connection to whatever this book and these letters relate to. And I am pretty sure that she goes, like, she wants to go deeper into it. So she starts researching. She goes around the world to find, like, books and documents and stuff like that. And I think that maybe this is something to do with Dracula. I think so. Or Vlad the Impaler. I don't really know. I don't think I really need to know. Whatever it is, I'm sure it's going to be interesting. And I've heard a lot of good things about this book. I hope it's kind of like dark because I think I would really like it if it is. And yeah, I'm excited to read this. It is long though. It's almost 700 pages. So I am a little scared of it as well. But I do think that a lot of you are right. I do think that I'm really going to like this one. Then we have another beautiful cover. This is A Poisoner's Tale by Cathryn Kemp. And this is set in 17th century Rome, where a lot of people are mysteriously dying, and no one can really figure out what's going on. And what no one knows is that beneath the city, there is this underworld of criminals and poisoners, and specifically female poisoners who help like the sad and beaten and abused women of the city, which is maybe why all of these men are dying. And I just thought that sounded really cool. I really like books with like poison. I think that's very interesting. And I like that this is set in Rome, of all places, in the 17th century. And obviously this cover isn't hurting anyone. It's beautiful and it immediately makes me want to read it. We also have The Specimen by Jaima Fixsen, and another great cover for this one, and it's set in 1826 in Edinburgh. Obviously, I want to read that. I love that kind of setting, especially for historical books. And this one follows a woman who For some reason, one day she comes into contact with this doctor who is like famous for his collection of specimens, and she gets to see his collection. And in his collection, there is this heart that has a very specific medical condition. And that's not like the weirdest thing that he has in his collection, but it's weird to her because her son, who disappeared months ago, had that heart condition, and it's like super rare. And I'm guessing this guy is doing some crazy stuff. And it says that this book is a story about truth and vengeance, which I'm really into. Next, we have one that I actually got from a friend. It's Lady Macbethad by Isabelle Schuler. And I got this from a friend, and she's like, "You like historical fiction, so I think you would like this one." And I do like historical fiction, so she was right. This is set in Scotland, not entirely sure the time period, but it follows the daughter of an ousted king who is like obsessed with becoming queen and nothing will stop her. And I'm guessing based on the title that this is inspired at least in part by Shakespeare's Macbeth. And I don't really know a lot about this, but I do like an ambitious woman and reading about them, so I think that could be cool. Moving on, we have some dark academia, which I love reading, and we're starting this part with a book that has been highly anticipated. It's Katabasis by R.F. Kuang, which I'm super excited to read because it sounds perfect for me. It follows two rivaling students at Cambridge who are studying magic, and they're studying under the same professor, and that professor has ended up in hell, and they really need him to come back, so they have to go get him. It sounds so absurd, but also so good. And I quite like this author, so I'm excited to read that. And then, even if it wasn't this author, I would have wanted to read this anyway, because it just sounds a little crazy, and I love it. Secondly, we have Plain Bad Heroines by Emily M. Danforth. And this is a book that I've had my eye on for a while, so I'm happy to finally have this. It's about this school that closes down in the early 1900s because of all of these mysterious deaths. There's something about two girls who are obsessed with this particular author, and I think that they make like a secret society in the author's honor, and both of those girls die. And then there's also something about some other deaths. And I'm not sure how all of this connects, but the school closes. Then, years later, someone writes a book about the school, and that inspires a very controversial horror movie, which sounds kind of mysterious and spooky, and I'm happy to finally have this. I've heard a lot of good things about it. The edition that I got, like, it's massive, so it seems like a very long book, but I don't know if it's just my edition, but yeah. Oh, it has illustrations. I didn't know that. That's cool. Then we have one that I've seen around a lot. It's This Is How We End Things by R.J. Jacobs. And this is set at a school in North Carolina where we meet these 5 students who are studying under this professor. And they're all studying like the science of lies or something like that, which sounds very intriguing. And then I think one of them either dies or is murdered. And I don't know how this happens, but somehow these students and the professor get stuck in a snowstorm at the school when like there are no other students there, and somehow they get trapped with a detective. I'm guessing this has something to do with the death, and I don't know how it all connects, but I've heard a lot of good things about this. I know it's not for everyone, but a lot of people that like the kinds of books that I like seem to like this. So I think I'm really gonna like it. And I'm really excited about this one. I have a really good feeling about it. The next one has quite an autumnal cover. It's Dark Things I Adore by Katie Latari. And this one has 2 timelines. One is set in 1988, where a group of outcasts gather at this arts camp, and I think during the camp one of them dies. And then in 2018 we meet an esteemed art professor who is on his way to one of his students' houses, I think, who lives quite remote, to view their like final collection or like art, their exam, I think. I don't really know how it works, but he's going to their house, and this art student seems to have some different plans for the weekend, and also there's something weird about the art that she's made. I don't really know. It sounds kind of mysterious and spooky, and I'm excited to see how these things sort of come together. I'm wondering if this art professor maybe was at the camp or something like that. Next, we have one that has quite an unsettling cover. It's The Forest Demands Its Due by Kostova Jackson, and this is set at a school in Vermont that is famous for molding teens into leaders. And we meet a student there who, to be honest, isn't that interested in becoming a leader or anything. He's just trying to survive the school because it's really intense. And then one day, I think one of the students goes missing or is murdered. I'm not quite sure. I think they go missing. And the next day, our main character is the only person who can remember that student. Everyone else has forgotten the student. And that's obviously very weird and unsettling. And I'm wondering if someone fed the student to the forest. I don't know. But it sounds kind of spooky, and I really like the setup of it. It sounds very intriguing. I think this is gonna be kind of dark though, but I'm into it. Then we have one that I've just seen around a lot and I couldn't resist it anymore. It's A Dark and Drowning Tide by Alison Saft. And I kind of just love this cover. I think it's so pretty and it really makes me want to read this, so I finally just had to get it. It's set in a fantasy world where we meet these rivaling scholars, I think, who are on an expedition to find this magical spring. And during the expedition, the leader of the expedition gets murdered, and I think our main characters have to figure out who has done it. And there's a little bit of like sapphic romance in here. I'm guessing it's like enemies to lovers or like rivals to lovers, and I don't know. I don't know what I'm gonna think of this, but I just have to give it a go because I can't stop thinking about it. And like every time I see this book, I just immediately want to read it. Last, for the Dark Academia, we have The Ivies by Alexa Dawn. And the Ivies in this one refers to these 5 students who are obsessed with getting into an Ivy League school, and they will stop at nothing to get there. And that's all I really know about this one. I just thought it sounded intriguing and kind of like dark and competitive and obsessive. I really like obsession in dark academia books, and it even says on the back they'd kill to get in. So I think this is going to get a little bit unhinged. The last category we have is mystery and horror. And first up here we have The Starving Saints by Caitlin Starling. And this one is about this castle, I think, that's under siege. And it's been under siege for months. And the people in there are just about to run out of food and all of their supplies. And then somehow this, I'm guessing a person or a saint or something, appears and replenishes everything for them. And it saves them. And all this being wants in return is adoration. And it seems like people start descending a little bit into madness trying to adore this person. And we're following a character who sees all of this for what it actually is. I just think that sounds really interesting. I don't really know. I think this is also historical fiction. And does it have cannibalism in it? It mentions cannibalism on the back. That's very intriguing. Kind of scary though, but yeah, but it does also say on the back here that it's gothic, which I love. I also really like the cover for this next one. It's Blood on Her Tongue, and this is set in the Netherlands in 1887, and we meet these, they're either sisters or twins, and one of them is like descending into madness, basically. She becomes obsessed with this corpse that's found in her husband's house, and she won't eat, and she's just completely unraveling. And the sister is trying to help her sister and like figure out what this corpse is that they've found. And then things change when the unwell sister suddenly gets really angry and aggressive and really hungry. And I think maybe she's a vampire. I don't really know. Maybe the corpse is a vampire. I don't know what's going on, but I would like to find out. We have more vampires in this next one. It's Fragile Animals by Genevieve Jagger. And I don't know what it says about me that I'm interested in reading this book, but I think it's about a woman who comes from a Catholic background and ends up in a sexual relationship with a vampire. And I think that like relationship is sort of based in confession. I don't know. I've had a friend who read this and thought it was like the weirdest book she'd ever read, and that made me want to read it. And I don't know what to expect from this, but it says it's a slick literary vampire novel to sink your teeth into, which I think could be good. I think I'm just gonna go into this with no, like, I don't want to know anything more. I'm just gonna read it and see. Second to last, we have this one. It's Eat the Ones You Love by Sarah Maria Griffin. And this one is about a woman whose whole life has fallen apart. And she moves back home, I think, and she gets a job at this flower shop. And in the back of that flower shop, there is a particular flower, I think it's an orchid or something, that is alive and likes to eat people and kind of wants to eat our main character. It sounds so weird, and I don't know what to expect from this one either, but it sounds very intriguing as well. And I think the flower just becomes obsessed with our main character, and it sounds horrific, but also just very weird. It says on the back that it's a story about possession and monstrosity and working in retail, which I'm into because I worked for 10 years in retail, and yeah, it makes sense that that is a part of a horror book for me. Lastly, we have The Only Good Indians by Stephen Graham Jones. And this is one of those books, again, that a lot of people have recommended to me. I've had several friends who have read it and loved it, so I kind of just got it based on that, and I didn't look too much into it. I think it's about these American Indian men who all experience some sort of terrifying event in their youths, and then as adults, there seems to be some sort of entity that's hell bent on vengeance that is hunting them down. And that sounds absolutely terrifying. I've heard that this is really good though, and that it's like emotional and really sharp, and I think this is the kind of horror that I am gonna love. So yeah, I also have another book by this author that I really want to read. It's a newer one. I can't remember what it's called, but it's Buffalo something. And yeah, I'm gonna read this first, and then if I like this, I'll probably get that and then read that. That was a lot of books, but we finally made it to the end. Now, I would love to know if you've read any of these books and what you thought, or if you have gotten any exciting new books lately, whether it's from the bookstore or the library. I would love to hear about it. I should probably go do some reading now. So, as always, thank you very much for hanging out with me today, and I will see you soon. Bye!